Athers, thank you so much for your time. I know I've been trying to get hold of you, but you've been rather busy. But what a fantastic start we've had to this test series. I mean, in just terms of like test viewing, we speak so much about test cricket. Who doesn't want such nail biting encounters that we just saw?
Yeah, I mean, we've been very lucky because obviously we had the 3 tests against West Indies before the opening test against Pakistan, and they were all pretty competitive and quite close games as well. And then the Pakistan test match, the first test at Old Trafford, was the best of the 4, really. So we've been very lucky, surprisingly so, I think, as well, how competitive the games have been given the absence of crowds, the absence of an atmosphere, the lack of preparation that certainly the Pakistan players had, match time preparation compared to the England players. So the players of all 3 countries actually so far have done us proud. We've been very lucky with the cricket that we've had, and fingers crossed that continues for the next 2 games.
No, it's been brilliant just to watch. I mean, the kind of contest that we've seen, even from Pakistan. But I'll come to the Pakistan team later. I think from an England perspective, let's just talk about England. I mean, there is this sentiment here that Pakistan dominated most of the days of the Test match, and then England kind of took it away from them. But you've got to give credit to them, especially when you look at somebody like Joss Butler. I mean, he was under so much criticism with regards to his keeping and so many other things, and lots of questions around him. So overall, a great result for England.
Yeah, they will feel they didn't actually play that well for long periods of the game, that they were outplayed by Pakistan until that final partnership between Butler and Wokes. As you say, Joss Butler was under a bit of pressure because his keeping had been indifferent earlier in the game. He'd missed 3 chances, 2 off Shan Masood. I think Shan had scored 45 at the time, so they were pretty costly misses. And Butler himself, after the game, said that he thought he might have been playing for his place. So he was in that kind of last chance saloon. And sometimes with that comes added freedom, actually. Combination of factors. I think if you feel that it's your last chance, sometimes you do have that freedom. And also England were in such a desperate situation at 117 for 5. It was almost like a lost cause. And again, sometimes when you're in that position, it helps just free you up and play, enable them to play quite aggressively and quite positively, and very quickly that momentum shifted back towards England. So it was a fantastic partnership between Wokes and Butler. I mean, Wokes' form in the run-up to that innings, he'd averaged about 5 in his last 7 test innings. So he was in no kind of form either with the bat, although he's been in brilliant form with the ball. So in some ways it was an unexpected partnership, but from an England perspective, a thankful one for sure.
Yeah, thankful it was. But when you look at their overall performance, of course, there are lots of positives, but there are certain things a win conceals. Of course, certain shortcomings or certain things that we saw in the games. I mean, England's opening pair woes, that's been one of the topics of discussion that we've seen. And of course, the series against West Indies, we saw 100 by Sibley. But if you look at their opening pair since Cook or Strauss, we haven't really seen a stable opening pair as such. I mean, do you think these 2, Burns and Sibley, are an answer to their opening pair woes?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that it is extremely tricky in England, or it has been extremely tricky in England, opening the batting against the Duke's ball in the last few years in particular. The last 2 or 3 years have been as tough as I've seen it at the top of the order. And then, so you put that in the combination with you're losing a player like Cook, who'd played 161 games, I think, hugely, vastly experienced, top quality player. So you've got 2 relatively newcomers to Test cricket coming in at a very difficult time, and against some really top-class bowling attacks. If you look around the world at the moment, I would say there are more really good bowling attacks than batting lineups in Test cricket. Australia are top class, Pakistan are good, India have a fantastic bowling unit, England themselves, New Zealand with Trent Boult, 1 or 2 others. So all around, there are tough bowling attacks. So it is tricky at the top of the order. Is it the answer? I mean, I don't know. I hate kind of, casting into the future. Nobody really knows what will happen. The one thing England like about Sibley and Burns, I mean, they're quite unusual looking players. They're different to look at the crease. They're technically unusual. But the one thing England like is that they both have shown an aptitude to learn, to improve. They're hard-working players. I think you saw with Sibley that run out the other day. He's really worked on his fielding and his fitness. All those kind of things suggest two players who are keen to learn and improve. So I think they'll be given maximum opportunity because, as you say, England haven't had a solid combination at the top of the order for some time. So they want to give these two guys maximum opportunity. They've done okay so far. Sibley's got a couple of Test hundreds. Burns has done okay. And to be honest, in county cricket, there aren't a huge number of opening batsmen, really slamming the door down with a volume of runs. If there was somebody out there that was getting thousands of runs and 100 after 100, you'd have an option there for the selectors just to say, okay, well, we've got an option if it doesn't work out. But at the moment, there isn't that. County cricket's only just restarted in England. So I think you'll see Burns and Sibley get maximum opportunity for sure.
No, but you spoke about how they're unusual looking players. I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to pick your brain with regards to. I mean, why are there so many unorthodox looking, players that we're now getting to see? I mean, I know it is effective. We've seen it in the case of Steve Smith and, so many other batsmen around the world. But just from a visual elegance perspective or, the orthodox batsmen that we used to see, do you think that's changing, or at least within England, you can speak about that?
Well, they are very unusual to watch, Burns and Sibley especially. But I quite like the fact that players have different techniques. If everybody batted the same way, it'd be a pretty boring game. So I quite like the fact that there are different players coming in. And I've long since stopped thinking that you can't score runs with unusual methods. I mean, you mentioned Steve Smith there, who's of course the classic example of a player who veers away from the orthodox, but gets more runs than anybody else. So it's really what works for you, and to find a method and a style of play that you're comfortable with and that works. And that's what Sibley and Burns have done throughout their first class careers. I mean, Sibley's got runs at every level that he's played. Now, you wouldn't, say that they're kind of the most fluent players to watch or, pleasing on the eye, but not everybody can be, a Virat Kohli or a Babar Azam or a Joe Root, whatever. So the game is made up of all different sorts and styles. And I quite like that variety, to be honest, because it gives you something interesting to talk about and write about. As I say, if everybody played the same, it would be a dull game. So I don't mind that.
Well, speaking of plenty to talk about, I think Chris Woakes has given us a lot to talk about. I mean, I wanted to speak about him. I saw his interview the night before when Pakistan had a lead of over 100 runs, and he just seemed so calm and composed out there. And he was pretty, like I said, he was really composed about the fact, and he pretty much said that no, I think we're still very much in the game. And I mean, I'm just talking about that kind of calmness that you see in a cricketer. I almost feel like sometimes he gets overshadowed by his peers. He's surrounded by great cricketers, Stuart Broad and James Anderson, but he seems to love playing against Pakistan. He took 26 wickets in 2016, and now he's won a match against them.
Yeah, you're right. He does get overshadowed. He gets overshadowed. I mean, it's so easy to forget sometimes that when he made his Test debut, actually, he made his Test debut at number 6 as a genuine all-rounder. That was against Australia quite a few years ago now. But of course, since then, he's been rather shadowed as an all-rounder by Ben Stokes. And he's been a bit overshadowed as a wicket-taker by the fact that England have got their two greatest wicket-takers with the new ball, Broad and Anderson, as you mentioned. But actually, Chris Woakes, in terms of taking his wickets in England with the Duke's ball, he gets his wickets at a better average than either Broad or Anderson. So he does get overshadowed a bit. I don't know, you'd have to ask him whether he minds that, but he's not he's not got a huge ego, it doesn't seem to me. He's kind of one of these perfect cricketers, really, unassuming, and just gets on with whatever job you ask him to do. Every team needs players like that. He's better than a utility player, but he's the kind of player who can come up or down the order, who can take the new ball or bowl first change. He'll do whatever you want him to do, and he'll do it uncomplainingly, and he often does it very successfully. So he's a fabulous cricketer. I think belatedly we're starting to realise his true worth to the England team. I think the selectors have earmarked him to take over from Jimmy Anderson with a new ball as and when that moment comes, which may not be for a little while yet. But he's a highly skillful bowler now, and when he finds his batting form, as he did the other day, he's a dangerous customer at that kind of number 8 position.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised because he's got 10 first-class centuries to his name. So, great. I think just generally a great all-round cricketer for England we've seen in the form of him. But coming to Pakistan, I can tell you that the general sentiment here is that of disappointment. People are very disappointed, mainly because of the fact that they feel that they dominated most of the test match and then they kind of gave it away in the last session. A lot of questions are being asked about Azhar Ali's leadership, whether he could have been more proactive. I want to know your thoughts. I mean, do you think he could have done things differently at all?
Well, the first thing to say, I think, is how well Pakistan played for the majority of that game. It's easy when you lose a match like that, a game that you expect to win, it's easy to focus on the last bit of the game that didn't go well. But actually, if you look at the game in its entirety, Pakistan played really well, if not better than England for most of it. And when you think of the disadvantage they had coming into the game with very little match practice, or at least, competitive match practice against an opposition rather than playing amongst themselves, I felt they were disadvantaged. So I was pleasantly surprised by how well Pakistan played right from the off and throughout that game. So I wouldn't discount that. If you're going to focus in on Azhar Ali and the performance, don't forget that for the majority of that game, Pakistan played really well. And that's what I would be focusing on as a captain. If I was in Azhar Ali's shoes, I'd be focusing on all the good things that Pakistan did. I remember a game I captained in the West Indies very early on in my captaincy career, probably a similar stage to Azhar Ali. I hadn't captained many games. We played a game in Trinidad, and we dominated the game for a lot of the time. And then we got bowled out for 46 in the last session, and we lost the game we should have won. We dropped a couple of catches, and then Curtly Ambrose blew us away. And everybody was focusing on that 46 all out, whereas I was kind of focusing on the fact that we'd outplayed the West Indies for 3 days. And I said to the team, I felt that was an area we should concentrate on, all the good things. And that next game we won in Barbados. So I wouldn't, if I was Azhar Ali, be concentrating on the negative stuff at all. I thought Pakistan played really well for a significant portion of the game. However, it was a game, you'd expect to win, you'd expect to defend 277. What could he have done differently? I mean, I wouldn't be too critical because I thought Wokes and Butler played really well. I suppose they could have gone at Chris Wokes with the short stuff a bit earlier, because that's where other teams have troubled Wokes in the recent past. But as I say, sometimes you have to give credit to the opposition. And Butler and Wokes played really well. And Pakistan played some good cricket throughout. So I wouldn't be too critical myself.
But there were, like you said, like you rightly pointed out, there were positives, and Naseem Shah was one of them. I mean, he's young and exciting to watch. Bowled a ripper to Ollie Pope, actually. So Pakistan will take confidence from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the challenge today will be whether, 3 consecutive matches with just 3 days in between. That's going to be a tough ask for any bowler. England, in the 6 test matches for the summer, have had this squad of fast bowlers, and they've been rotating probably from game to game. But right at the start, they said they didn't think a fast bowler will be able to get through more than 4 of those 6 games. Of course, Pakistan are only playing 3 and West Indies 3, but it's still quite an ask for a young 17-year-old, to play 3 consecutive tests together. So that, I think, will be the challenge, whether he can keep that pace up through 3 games, whether Pakistan will rotate or whatever. I mean, as I say, for the majority of that game, their fast bowlers bowled superbly. Mohammad Abbas with a new ball, Shaheen Shah Afridi with a new ball swinging it, and then Naseem Shah with that pace that we saw. But it won't be easy to do that for the next game and the game after. So we'll have to see. And I kind of think that the Old Trafford pitch probably would suit Pakistan more than Ageas Bowl. I mean, I haven't not got to the Ageas Bowl yet. But the pitch at Old Trafford was very kind of subcontinental in style. It was very coarse and dry. You felt it was suited to Pakistan particularly on that final day. So whether the Ageas Bowl will be as bare, as suited, I don't know. We'll wait and see.
I mean, speaking about Mohammad Abbas, I mean, how does England negate the threat of Mohammad Abbas? We saw a few things being tried, players stepping out of their crease. We saw Rizwan walking up to the stumps, but how do you play him?
Well, with difficulty. I mean, if you look at his record over a number of years now, in first-class cricket, he averages less than 21. And over a long period of time, if you have a record like that, it suggests you're an exceptional bowler. And at his pace, which is, 80 miles an hour or just a little bit less, you've got to be both super accurate, which he is, and you've got to be very skillful. You've got to be able to move the ball, which he obviously can do. I think what England will do is they'll try and bat out of their crease. Because of the lack of pace, they'll try and, get down the pitch to him. Ben Stokes tried it and got bowled first innings. And that's where, as you say, it makes Rizwan's role really important. I thought he had a brilliant match with the gloves, actually. He kept fantastically well throughout the innings. So what he will do is obviously come up to the stumps when England try and get down the pitch a bit. And that makes that combination between Rizwan and Mohammad Abbas very important.
I mean, there was also this conjecture going around with regards to, the conditions being ideal for Pakistan. We saw the pitch was rather dry. But one of the things that was being spoken about was why we didn't really actually see any reverse swing from the Pakistan bowlers. We saw that from England, actually, I think around the 25th or 30th over Chris Woakes, but didn't really get to see that from Pakistan, which is a surprise because that's an art that Pakistan is traditionally known for.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, there wasn't that much reverse swing for either side. As you say, just a little bit. But when I think reverse swing, I think back to, 92. In our coverage, we showed a bit of that old footage of Wasim and Waqar with the ball, moving at right angles. That's what I think of reverse swing rather than, moving a centimetre or so. I don't know why. The outfield was very lush. We had quite a bit of rain in the run-up to the game and in the first two games, and that kept it a little bit damp. So every time the ball got hit into the outfield, maybe it just, affected the dryness. Whether the absence of saliva, affects the difference in weights to one side of the ball to the other, I don't know. I'm not an expert on reverse swing, only facing it. I never bowled it. But you're right, it was one of the surprises that on that last afternoon, everybody thought by about the 40th, 50th over, we'd see some reverse swing. And I think, was it the 45th over that Woakes came to the crease at 117 for 5? You kind of felt there was going to be some reverse swing around about then, but it didn't really materialise. So that was certainly to England's advantage.
Speaking of, opening pair, we've spoken about England. Pakistan has also had their fair share of troubles. If you look at, they probably haven't had a stable opening pair since Saeed Anwar and Amir Sohail days. But Shan Masood, do you think he's the most improved batsman to come out of Pakistan? Like we saw him in 2016 as well.
Yeah, we'd seen him obviously have his troubles in England before and have his troubles against James Anderson in particular, who got him out, I think, 6 times in 6 innings or something. So, fantastic performance from him. I think everybody was happy to see the way that he played because, when you've had your struggles as a player, there are 2 ways to go. You either just, down tools and say, well, I can't do it, or you find ways to improve and get better and overcome your hurdles or your weaknesses. And that's obviously what Shan Masood has done. So great credit to him, the way that he played. I thought Abid Ali, looked good as well, actually, at the other end. The partnership looked decent. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them get runs over the next two games as well. As I say, it's very tough at the top of the order. in England, Duke's ball, people like Broad and Anderson. You know, it's about as tough an ask as there is in international batting at the moment. So, you know, great credit to Shan Masood for the way that he played.
Yeah, for sure. That's what we saw from him. You know, parting thoughts. We're moving on to Southampton now. You know, it's going to be a different pitch. What do you think the selectors are thinking from an England perspective? Because now Ben Stokes is not playing. And then what about Pakistan? Do you think they should make any changes?
Well, from England perspective, you're right. Ben Stokes has gone back to New Zealand to see his parents. His father's not very well. So I suspect they will just bring in a batsman for Ben Stokes, Zach Crawley, because Ben Stokes has effectively played as a batsman in the last game or two. Yeah. And then it's just whether Anderson plays, whether he'll need a rest, and they'll rotate him. I don't know, but that's their option. The one thing to say is we're in the middle of a heat wave here in England, believe it or not. It has been about 34, 35 degrees the last
That's really
3 or 4
hard to believe.
I know it's hard to believe, but it's been baking hot. Thunderstorms are coming. So the pitch, I don't know. It may well be, you know, quite dry, quite spin friendly. Who knows? I haven't yet seen it. So thinking ahead to Pakistan, I suppose that one area is that Shadab Khan position, you know, number 6, the balance of the side. But given the weather that we've had, it may well be the kind of surface that you want to play 2 spinners on as well. And then going back to the point about Naseem Shah and the young lads, whether they can get through 3 consecutive test matches. So, you know, they're questions that are hard to answer right now because I haven't seen the pitch. You're not really sure how the bowlers will rock up after a pretty hard test match. All those things will become clear as we get through to the game. But I wouldn't panic if I was Pakistan. You know, I'd be saying, you know, we outplayed or competed with England for long, long periods of that game. You know, why shouldn't we do it again? Hoping that it'll be just as competitive a game second time around.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Athers, I'm going to let you go now. Thank you so much for your thoughts. You've taken up the time. And yeah, I mean, let's hope for a good, exciting test match once again, because that's what we all want. Hopefully the result is in our favor this time. I'll be cheeky enough to say that.
Well, fingers crossed for a good game. Good to see you.
Yeah, people have really enjoyed it. I think we were kind of cricket deprived overall, and it's just good to see in whatever conditions we've got now, whatever protocols we have out there, it's just good to see that we have cricket back now.
Great.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Athers. Thank you.
Okay. Good to talk.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.